Hello, and welcome to STEAM of Consciousness, a program presented by the ARI Podcasting Network and hosted by George Koperna. What is STEAM? STEAM stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, Art, and Mathematics. During each episode, we will take a few minutes to sit down with professionals in different STEAM-related fields to give them an opportunity to share their story and give their perspectives with the goal of promoting career awareness to potentially interested students, young professionals, and of course, anyone else who shares a fascination with these areas of study. And now, please join us as we tap into the STEAM of consciousness.
Welcome to STEAM of Consciousness, a podcast on the ARI Podcasting Network. Today, we're very pleased to be joined by Alex Arimes, and she's a graduate student in geology at Kansas University. Welcome, Alex.
Hi, glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
So tell me a little bit about what your day-to-day is at Kansas.
So right now I'm a graduate teaching assistant. I go between teaching two courses for petroleum geology lab and geology 101. I've been a TA for the past 2 years, kind of going between the introductory courses and some of the higher level courses. So say day to day would be doing those, preparing lectures for those, doing the labs, and then just working on research and writing, proposals and the thesis itself.
So on top of going to class and being a full-time student, you're also working. So how's that life balance going for you? Did you find it a little challenging at first to juggle both of those things, or were you able to step right in and work through it?
It was for sure challenging. Like the first semester, I didn't feel like I had enough time in the day to do anything. And like, man, it's 8 o'clock and I'm really tired brain-wise and I don't want to do anything. And actually contemplate, I was like, am I even capable of being a grad student? Like, this is just really hard. But apparently, I find out through talking with other students that I'm not alone in that feeling. And that's just, it's really overwhelming the first semester. And then you kind of just get into the groove and the flow of things, because it's just kind of a learning curve that you have to go through. So I found that it's just gotten easier as time has passed on.
Were there any tricks that you learned to help budget your time, or was it just plow through it and get the workload kind of balance correct?
Kind of a mix of both. Some semesters were busier than others, so I just found timers were really helpful as far as budgeting out time in my day and setting timers to make sure I wasn't spending too much time on one thing, or getting up and taking breaks to refresh myself, or just some days just taking a day off to kind of really relax your brain and then get back into the work. We can hit it hard and know that maybe there's some days where you have to work a little longer and later into the evening than others.
And I think that's really good advice for anybody. And I appreciate you sharing that. And let's get in our way back machine and go back in time, because when we first met, Alex, you described yourself as a non-traditional student. And I think it's really interesting that the goals of this podcast are talking about how everyone's journeys are different, and that's okay. When you were in high school, what did you want to be when you grew up? I don't think it was a geologist.
No, it definitely wasn't. So it's kind of funny. You mentioned circles. It was definitely a full circle story. So when I was a kid, there were two things I liked: geology and human body and medicine. And so as I got older, that kind of became the important one, was medicine. And so I thought that I was going to go to school to be a nurse. And so that's what my focus was in high school.
And so you did all the work, and when you started looking for colleges and where you were going to go for that next step, what kind of did you lean in? You were looking, I guess, at that time, pre-med or nursing. Was that how your decision structure? How far did you cast your net when you were looking?
Not very far. So when I was about to graduate high school, high school wasn't really a great time for me. My parents were divorced and there was a lot of family stuff going on. And so I didn't have the greatest GPA. And at that time, acceptance rates were in the 50s. And I also just didn't have money to go to a university and didn't want to take out a loan. So I just figured, I'm just going to go to a community college first and, go from there. And maybe I can increase my GPA and then get the basic credits out of the way and then transfer. So I did that for a little while, but then I ended up having to drop out just because I didn't have the money. I moved out, lived on my own, and then it became where I just had to work 2 full-time jobs to, be able to pay the bills. And so I did that for quite some time until I ultimately said, I'm tired of doing this and I want to actually go to school and make something of myself and make it where I'm not living paycheck to paycheck and being exhausted all the time.
And that decision process, I mean, and thank you for being candid, was, was it still nursing? Was it still along the lines of, the body and medicine that interests you? And is that where you went, or did you start thinking you wanted to revert back to your other favorite?
Yeah, so that's kind of where the full circle happens, or the one door closes and others open. I went back to community college in Kentucky, so I moved back with my dad and his family for a little bit, again, to be able to save some money. Was still working through community college, be able to avoid the loan thing, and did the pre-nursing, and then got to the point where I had applied to the University of Kentucky, gotten accepted, and was supposed to be applying for nursing school, and went to clinicals for the CNA class, which is kind of a nursing assistant. And I don't know, a light bulb kind of went off where I went, I really like medicine and the human body, but do I really like having to be around people and have this, bedside manner and all of this compassion and stuff. And I wasn't sure if it was going to be something that I was going to be good at. And I was worried also, maybe I'm not going to get into nursing school. So I thought, well, I'm already accepted to the university. And if I don't make it to nursing school this go round, it's a whole year off. I've made it this far. I don't want to have to take time off again. So what could I possibly do, at the University of Kentucky as a major that sounds interesting? And so was just looking through the possibilities, thinking about things, and saw geology and thought back to, when I was a kid and how much I liked it. And then thought about, well, all of, the shows that I've seen, growing up, they're always outside doing something. And I love being outside and not being, necessarily at a desk job 40 hours a week. So let's just try geology and take the introductory course and see where it goes. And sure enough, I wasn't wrong. I was like, oh man, I love this just as much as I did when I was a kid.
Well, how long did it take you? I mean, that's a pretty big leap of faith. So kudos to you for willing to step off that cliff, if you will. Was it immediate? Did it take, oh gosh, I kind of like this, and then second semester was, boy, this is getting more interesting as your classes start to get more interesting? What was that timeline like for you?
Oh, it was definitely the first semester because I took the introductory class and it had a lab. It, our first practical was 50 minerals that we were placed on a table, and we were supposed to know the names and the properties and things. And I just remember studying for that and watching all the videos and reading the text, just everything enjoyable. And I thought, man, if this is the introductory class, what more do I have that's going to come later on? Because this has already got me hooked.
So it was mineral identification. Huh? That's awesome. And so that would have been probably your first year, and
Yeah.
then everything after that, I'm just guessing, just kind of cemented that into your mind that this is where you needed to be.
Oh, for sure. There wasn't a single class that I didn't enjoy, even by it being during COVID times. It still just was great and fun. And the University of Kentucky, the department did a really good job of adapting to it being COVID. So like for the physical geology classes, we were supposed to map um, out in the field, but she modified it and made it where there was Google Earth images, and then groups would come in and we each look at the actual like specimens of the rocks and stuff. And so it's really neat. I still got to make a map from it, and that still got me interested, and then kind of set the precedence for, what's the real thing going to be like? And, we're actually out in the field. They talk about this field camp. It's got to be better than looking at it on Google Earth.
Well, that's awesome. And I think one of those things that folks like me often forget is, my kids were in high school during COVID, and that just kind of ruined the social interaction. It ruined a whole lot of things that people in high school today probably take more for granted, as my youngest son may. Proms were canceled and things like that, but everything was remote. And was a lot of that the same? Well, when you were at Kentucky, was it, gosh, you're not getting that action, or were you able to have that support structure from your peers and your professors to help you power through?
I think we did have a support system, because I'd say COVID, the one advantage from being at a smaller department was we didn't have huge classes. So they were able to try and adapt as best as possible, make it where we could have in-person experiences and still obey with the regulations that were going on, which was really, really nice. And then it also made it, where there was a sense of camaraderie, because there was, all of us were going through the same thing. And instead of being on a screen, we would go into maybe the lab room and we'd all be spaced out because there was only 6 of us, but at least we'd all be there and kind of talk about the geology, and also talk about what the heck was going on. Just how, like, something new and different.
And when you were able to, looking at your history here, were you able to do any internships while you were in school, or some part-time jobs that kind of helped along the way in terms of furthering your interest in geology?
So the summer, I guess, half of between senior year and the final semester that I had to take one more credit hour is when I did my first internship. But previous to that was field camp the summer before, but I wasn't really told or informed about anything that I could do as far as a job in geology, for student positions or internships or anything. So I just continued to work, the part-time job that I was working that wasn't related to geology, but the internship really, that summer was kind of the really big, good one. They had advertised it for the department because it was going to be the first year that they were doing the internship. And I thought, maybe I should try and do something over the summer that's related to geology and see how that goes, instead of, working the job that I'm still working.
Mm. And were you able to draw on, I mean, was that the soils lab, or was that another internship?
So the internship was before the soils lab. It
I
was
see.
where I worked with Matt Crawford in the geohazards department and used ArcGIS to map and create polygons for landslides in 2 quadrangles in southeastern Kentucky, where they have really high susceptibility to slope failure and landslides occurring. And it was actually part of a bigger FEMA project for landslide hazard mapping and mitigation. And I guess the survey liked me so much that when I came back from doing field work that summer, they were like, "Hey, do you want to work in the soils lab? You already have soils experience." And I thought, heck yeah, please.
Well, fantastic. But, at that point, you were almost ready to graduate. And what was walk us through your decision process? You're a senior. Do you try to go out and get a job in industry? Did you think about that at all? Or was it, gosh, I really want to go to graduate school. I'm interested in A, B, or C, and that's what you wanted to do. Walk us through that process.
So yeah, it wasn't an immediate decision about grad school. I had thought about doing industry, but same time, I've always been a curious person, and after going through all the courses in geology, I kind of found myself still questioning and thought, yeah, I've learned a whole lot, but I feel like there's still a whole lot more that I can learn that will help with, that curiosity, but then also help with having knowledge that then can be applied better and stronger for working in industry. And so that was kind of what made me think maybe I should go to grad school and, be able to learn more about geology.
And I was very much the same way when I got my undergraduate degree. I just kind of felt like there was so much more that I wasn't ready. Maybe that's not how you felt, but that whether it was curiosity or a need to know a little bit more before I entered the private sector. Now, you worked through that process. You talked a little bit earlier in our conversation about adjusting to being the teaching assistant and taking courses, and once you had that footing, what did you really enjoy about that first year of being a graduate student, where you're interacting with the students when you're your teaching assistant role, and when you're sitting behind the desk and being the student? How was it balancing those differences, and what did you like about it?
It definitely was different. It was interesting. It felt like, I was shifting uh, personalities per se, or stepping into a different world in the same day, depending on being that student or being the teacher. Um, and then I would say probably the thing that I liked the most about it was the teaching, which was unexpected. I enjoyed, seeing the light bulbs go off, or having students that were interested in, what the labs were being worked on, like the hand samples and stuff. And it also made me realize that to be able to teach something, you have to really know that subject matter really, really well and know how to explain it in multiple ways. And it kind of tests you and yourself and your knowledge and capability of those things. And I found that it made me gain a deeper understanding in a lot of things that I thought I knew a lot about in geology, but actually, didn't know as much as I thought, or wasn't as good as, or weren't able to explain it as well as I thought I would be able to.
What an excellent explanation, because I think that's hitting the nail right on the head, because what works for one person may not work for another. And sometimes you're going to have to pivot that explanation. So thank you. Um, so you've worked through your first year, and now I'm assuming that there were more opportunities for internships. Um, and you had a pretty nice one. Tell us a little bit about what your internship was.
Yeah, sure. So the summer between my first and second year, interned with Occidental Petroleum, and to my surprise, me in the Denver office, and I thought, okay, it's going to be something related to, the DJ Basin, and that's where I'm doing my thesis work. But they threw me a curveball and they said, we're going to look at California and exploration geothermal. And I went, oh boy, I don't know anything about exploration, and I definitely don't know anything about geothermal. And so it was a wild ride, and it was nothing but a learning experience. And um, at the beginning, I was really worried and thought, oh man, this isn't going to go good. But by the end, I was like, wow, this was really neat and incredible. Like, I learned so much, and it left me really curious and also, knowledgeable about something that I didn't ever think that I'd be interested in, or know anything about, the geothermal aspect. Then also kind of changed uh, my way of thinking, because, exploration, there's not a lot of data that you just have a limited amount and you're given it, and then you need to extrapolate something from it as results, or tentative you know recommendations. And that was not something that I had ever done before, and so that definitely was a struggle, but it was a great experience, because it gave me the opportunity to think, you might be in a similar situation moving forward, in your career, where you have to think outside of the box and just do the best you can to come up with recommendations. And maybe one out of the 10 is going to be correct, but at least you have 10 possibilities that you thought of. So it was really awesome.
You couldn't be more right. And as someone who's been in his industry for almost 30 years now, how people deal with limited data sets really separates the wheat from the chaff, if you will. And I think it's an invaluable skill to learn. And let's tease that out a little bit. And when you were doing your internship, I think what they were really looking for you to do is apply your basic understanding of basic geology, right, to develop along the lines of something new. And how long did it take you to kind of get your footing underneath you and go, yeah, I can do this. And this is just rather than look at the macro problem, let's look at the steps and the micro bits that I do know. How did you approach it? Was it like that, or was it, or did you just jump right in and try to tackle the whole enchilada?
Definitely jumped right in and tried to tackle it. And, I
Good
went
for
through
you.
that the last probably 2 or 3 weeks where I finally started thinking how you were saying of like breaking it down and trying to put the pieces together to make a bigger picture. Um, and so I think that was why it was such a struggle for me, because I didn't know how to do that yet, and that was one of the things that my manager had said, as feedback towards the end was just, never done this before, and you're also just in your first year of grad school, and that's what grad school is meant to be. Is it's supposed to help you think outside of the box and approach a problem and try and find answers to that problem and do it in a methodical, systematic way because you've probably never really truly done that in your undergrad.
And and let's build on that because we talked about the time challenges and the balance challenges of your first year teaching assistant being a student. You're applying what you're learning in graduate school. How is that framed here your second year? Do you feel a little bit more, my feet are now firmly planted, I have these skills that I've developed? How are you approaching your second year?
Oh yeah, for sure. I'd say between the first year and that intern experience, it definitely helped. Time management became much more easier. I figured out that if you take something that seems like this big, huge thing that you're like, gosh, I'm never going to be able to do this. I'm not going to. The end is not in sight, and you break it down into steps, and you set, um, you know, bars to reach each week or a month. Um, it becomes a lot easier to do that, and then just multitasking became a lot easier between after the first year of juggling and being able to bounce between being the teacher and being the student, and then having to think on research and write grants. um and yeah.
It's remarkable. Thank you. And I think one of the things that you're probably wrestling with right now that, I know personally is what's your next steps and how are you beginning to approach this? Because graduate programs are typically 2 years. Um, you have options, probably. You probably have employment options, continued education options. Where are you leaning? How are you thinking about this?
um Definitely leaning towards going into the workforce and industry, because I think I just would enjoy it, and uh, kind of want to break from having to think in the academia mindset and be able to take what I've learned and apply it, knowledge. And that was what I liked about working the internship was I was working with real world problems and data set. Um, but as far as where in industry, that's where it's kind of interesting because of how the world is at the moment in time, and that affects uh, job prospectability as far as which niche of industry to go into. So I had originally intended, going to Kansas to maybe work for an energy company, um, but right now that's kind of it's a little bit of a predicament per se, maybe. So then there was thinking about, well, how can I take all of the skills that I have acquired through my undergrad internship in the grad school and be able to curtail or apply those to something else, geology related, that I would be able to work. So, something like maybe environmental geology and consulting would be, another potential option moving forward.
So you're not just narrowly focused. You're broadly looking at the challenges out there. So that's probably to your credit and benefit, I would think. Um, I I look at the problem in this way, and because my daughter had just graduated from Virginia Tech not long ago, earlier this year, the resources that they had job fairs, industry weeks, similar things I think probably happen in Kansas. But all through all of that, the way the industry is so uncertain, and she's not in the energy industry, she's in the engineering side, but it took her until after graduation to get her job offer, which was a little bit, white knuckling and biting my nails. Hopefully that isn't the case for you, but are you leveraging, what kind of resources are you leveraging at Kansas to kind of help you make your choice?
Um, Definitely uh, professors and kind of just getting advice from them and seeing if they know, people working for companies that might be hiring or suggestions on what to do moving forward. And then, as you said, we have an industry week every year where companies come, and it's a variety from oil and gas companies to State Department or like USGS survey. And so seeing, going to those information sessions and seeing what they're about, if they have any openings, if they'll have any future openings. Yeah.
No, I know it's a lot. I always thought, even as an undergrad trying to wrestle with, do I want a job? What job do I want? How do I get out there? Because it was different for me, and I'm sure it was different for my daughter, and I'm sure it's different for you in that decision process. So, I really thank you for your candor today, and for taking time. For those on the call, she's ready to go out to a geo field trip. You want a little plug for your field trip?
So it's a geomorphology field trip, and so we're going through Nebraska, looking at the morphology of the South Platte River and the Missouri River, and then the Sand Hills and Los geomorphology, and then ending at the Rocky Mountains and seeing, some alpine glaciation versus the continental glaciation geomorphologic features as we drive across the Great Plains. So it's pretty neat. Lots of stuff that I haven't certainly seen before. So
I hope you guys have a great time and learn a lot. It sounds excellent. So, I think we're about at time. One more question for you, if I may. Hopefully it's easy. What do you love about being a geologist so far?
So far, definitely the field aspect. Got to get that while you can, because that might not be so much as an option. But I'd say the other thing is just more and more curiosity. The more I am a geologist, the more curious I am, and the more I realize the whole world revolves around geology, and there's always some sort of aspect of geology that explains whatever a part of whatever the world, and how it's just so wide of a field. You could have a lifetime of spending trying to learn knowledge, and you probably only touch the tip of the iceberg as far as geology goes, which is really amazing.
Well, I again, thank you so much for taking time today, and I know you guys are about to go have some serious fun under the term of learning. So I hope you enjoy yourself and learn a lot. And this has been a presentation of the ARI Podcasting Network. I'd like to sincerely thank Alex for taking time from her busy day to join us, and for Ryan Kessler for producing this podcast. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to listen to new episodes of Stream of Consciousness, available on your preferred podcast listening station.